we want to start off super simple and just go over like what was your childhood like and what kind of led you into the whole addiction and substance use path.
As a child, I had a really good, decently good upbringing. I had a mom and a dad that were very committed to each other, very religious. I grew up religious, but I was very attached to my grandma, maternal grandmother, and she passed away when I was about 7 years old. And after that, that is when I started exhibiting behaviors to my parents that were alarming. I was starving myself, doing rituals, which they didn't know that I was doing rituals, but I was doing things obsessively. And they took me to a family therapist or psychiatrist, and she diagnosed me with childhood anxiety. And I didn't know what was happening to me. As a child, I was a very nauseous kid. I was constantly just nauseous. And back then, when you're so young, like you don't know what that feeling is. When you're a kid, you're like, why do I feel like this all the time?
Right.
Now I know why.
Right. Anxiety presents in children with
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to verbalize it, so they say their stomach hurts.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was going on with my daughter. She would always say, "Mom, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I don't feel good. I don't want to go to school this morning." That was her way of presenting anxiety. So it sounds very familiar.
Yes. So I was an anxious kid. And it would come and go in waves. But particularly when that incident happened, my whole world flipped upside down. My little brother and I were pretty close in age, so he was experiencing some similar behaviors. Not as bad because he was a little younger and didn't quite understand everything that was going on. But my brother and I grew up in a pretty good home, all in all, with besides what happened with my grandma. So normal childhood. We moved houses a couple times, and when I first started noticing that I might have bigger issues was my dad was a loving dad, and I know he has two other kids from a previous marriage. And so I grew up with them. I didn't know any better. They were always my sister and brother. And my dad tried to show love to everybody, tried to show love to all of his kids. But for some reason, I think it fell short with me. And so I was engaging in risky behaviors at a very, very young age. I went to a school that wasn't the greatest. I think if my parents could have picked a better school, they would have. But back at that time, I don't think they could afford private school for both of us. So we went to a public school, and we grew up in a small town that would be put on the map later on down the road, which is Ferguson, Missouri, where the riots happened.
Yep.
And so I grew up there till I was 20 years old. So I went to high school there and picked up bad habits. I was smoking at 13 years old, smoking Mary Jane at 13, 14, sneaking out, doing bad things. But yeah, the first major event that tripped a wire in my life, besides what happened as a child, was being essayed. And I was 15 years old, and I was always going to parties with older kids that were already in college, and I was a freshman in high school. And I was like, cool, because I was in with the seniors and the college kids, and I was going to these parties, and I had a boyfriend, a serious boyfriend. In my mind, it was a serious boyfriend. He was older than me. He was popular at that time. And so we were at a party, and my parents were out of town. They would leave their car keys to the second car, and I would take it and I would drive it. At 15 years old, I would drive the hell out of my mom's car everywhere. Looking back, I'm like, oh my God, like, what were my parents thinking, you know? But we went to this party and it was on New Year's Eve, and it was with all my best friends. And I wasn't a huge drinker. I didn't necessarily like the way it made me feel. So I just was like sipping on a beer, trying to like pretend like I was cool, and I definitely wasn't. And I started to feel really out of sorts. And I had done that before, so I was like, why am I feeling this way? And my best friend was right along with me the whole night. She's like, I haven't seen you drink anything like that would make you feel loopy. Like, why are you acting like this? And I was stumbling and falling and slurring my words. Next thing you know, my friends see my boyfriend at the time throwing me over his shoulders, and he was carrying me out of the party. And they all thought it was funny. They were laughing and they were like, bye, like, oh my God, look at her, she's so shit trash. Like, he gets in my mom's car, drives my mom's car back to my parents' house, and he puts me on the couch. And I go in and out of it. I know sort of what's going on, but not all of what's going on. And I'm kind of just like, kind of trying to push him off me, and it's not working. I black out. When I wake up, I know exactly what happened. I mean, exactly what happened. I was in the corner of my living room, rocking back and forth and comforting myself. And I called my best friends and I told them what just happened, and called his best friend. And they all came to my house like the next, I mean, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning by this time. So they all came back and I told them what happened. I told 5 people what happened, and I told them to not tell anybody. And so we went and got the emergency contraceptive pill. I took it exactly as they tell you to take it. And I was like, I'm good. I'm in the clear, you know? And he kept trying to come back around, and then I would hear that he was, you know, sleeping with other people and being with other girls, and it would break my heart. And I was like, why am I crying over a guy who literally took my innocence and SA'd me at the same time? Mind you, I was 8 when this happened. Right. So this was a huge event. And I just started to feel worthless. 3 or 4 months in after New Year's Eve, no, it was probably about 5 months. It was summertime. I could actually feel movements in my stomach. And I remember laying in the driveway with my best friends, and I was really skinny. So I would try to suck it in, and there would just be like this lump in my stomach. And I'm like, why won't that go down? And I would try to press on it, and I would feel like a kicking back at me.
Right.
I didn't know what the hell it was. I didn't at all. My parents had never gave me the sex talk. They had never given me any kind of like birth control, nothing. So I knew nothing about what was happening. So I called Big Sister and I told her the symptoms. And she's like, Amy, you're pregnant. Like, are you serious right now? And so she took me to get an ultrasound, and I believe I was 23 weeks along when I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. And what were the chances of the plan B not working? Like, what's the percentage rate on that? I'm just curious.
So back then, I believe the ECP pill was a lot less effective than it is now.
Yeah. That's scary.
Yeah. I want to say it was 76% effective back then.
Which that's still a big chance of it, I mean, not working. So yeah, wow.
Were you sick? Were you nauseous? Were you feeling any other symptoms besides just feeling bloated and big?
I didn't even feel bloated necessarily. I still felt super skinny. It was just like there was like
a lump.
Just a lump. And I thought maybe like I had like a tumor or something. And we didn't have like smartphones so we could just
right.
Google
Times were different. Times were a lot different back then.
Right. So, I mean, if it was today, I would have been like, why do I have a lump in my stomach? You know, but like back then I had no way of searching anything. I mean, I had
Yeah.
like my family computer, but I was afraid my
I
family
know what
would
you
see the
mean. I
history.
know times were so different with
Yeah.
technology.
So whenever all this happened though, like before you actually found out, did you confront him at any point? Like what
I
the
did.
hell happened or
I did. Multiple times in this 5 month period, I asked him why he did what he did. And he ended up telling his best friend that he roofied me. He did put GHB in my drink, and that he wanted to see how I would act, and he thought it might be funny. And his best friend at that time stopped talking to him over this issue and was more along like on my side.
I would hope so.
So during the 5 months, he was messing around with this other girl. And this other girl was also a virgin. And he also took her innocence, not in the way that he did me. She allowed him to do that, fully knowing that he potentially had a child on the way with a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old. And she didn't care. So there was a lot of issues between her and I, fight-wise, okay? After I had the baby, we fought a lot. And not proud of that, but it just is what it is. But my parents, they finally found out when I was about 5.5, 6 months along.
Yep.
My sister was the one to tell my dad. My dad told my mom. And I thought my mom was going to just slap me in the face or something. But they ended up being really supportive. And I kept the secret of how I got pregnant. I kept it for years. I didn't tell my parents that I was SA'd until I was 19 years old. So I
Was
kept the secret for 3.5 years.
Well, and it's weird. Like I've been roofied before, and I'm assuming it wasn't intended for me. But just whenever you come to and figure out what the hell happened, that alone is a really strange feeling. So to know that happened on top of it, I mean, that would be like crazy traumatic.
It was like I was in a dream.
So internalizing all this, I'm sure that it was hard for you, especially when you gave birth, when you're looking at that child. Like, did you feel connected or did you kind of have to detach yourself a little bit? Because that's traumatic.
So the most effed up thing about this entire situation is the guy who did this to me. Once the secret was out, once the cat was out of the bag, and everybody knew that I was pregnant with his baby, he then had me under lock and key. He controlled my every movement. His sister threw me a baby shower, made me feel really uncomfortable, made me feel like I was a part of their family and I was being welcomed into this. No offense, but their family is just all sorts of messed up. Redneck hillbillies living like chicken coops in the backyard that later on bit my child in the face when she was 2 years old. But I mean, their way of living was just not right. So I didn't want to be a part of that family. And I also was just turned off by the entire thing that he had done this to me. And now he's like trying to act like he owns me and controls me. And in my messed up brain, I thought that was okay. I thought maybe that's just how relationships are supposed to be. And I should just accept this and I should just be okay with this. So he was in the labor and delivery room and I asked him to leave multiple times. I said, I want my mom. I don't want you. And he would take my hand and he would squeeze it. And he would squeeze it so hard that he would like try to break the bones in my fingers. And that's how he was like letting me know, like, you're not going anywhere. You're not leaving. You're not having your mom in here. My mom's going to stay in here, like his mom. and you're not going to see your mom. This is just going to be how it is, and you're just going to have to accept it. I remember like asking for an epidural, and he was like, "Oh, we don't get epidurals in our family." Like,
Wow.
his mom birthed all their children on the kitchen floor. Now, not knocking you, but hey,
Right. Good for you, but that's not what I
my
would
way.
do.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I'm 16 years old and I'm about to have a baby that I didn't know I was going to have up until just 3 months ago. So I didn't have very long to process that. I did consider adoption, and he would not sign off on any of the paperwork. So not only did he punish me, but stole my innocence, and he wouldn't allow us to give my child a better future, better than I could give my child at that time.
Were you able to finish high school and stuff like that? Like,
It was.
good for
I was a
you.
very, very blessed in that way. So my mom stepped up to the plate in a way I can't even describe. And to have a mother who will step up and raise your child after you get pregnant, and out of whether it's just being an irresponsible teen or out of SA, for your mom to step up. And my mom was much older when she had me. My mom was 36 years old. So she was well into her 50s when she took on the full responsibility of raising my newborn daughter while I was going to high school every single day, and then I would have to go to night school to catch up on everything I missed. So I
Wow.
was double dutying, and I was in ROTC through the military. And so when I walked across that stage, I graduated with a 3.9 GPA in military honors. So I was very proud of myself. And I had a 1.5-year-old when I
Wow.
graduated.
Good for you.
You would think life would just be good and peachy from there, but definitely not. That was just the beginning. So I graduated high school, and while I was a senior in high school, I had a best friend. His name was Cameron, and we grew up together since we were about 7 years old. I think we always had a crush on each other. And he stepped up to the plate, and he raised my daughter as his own. And we got engaged, and just kind of moved on in life. When I went to college, tried to live as normal of a life as I could with my circumstances. His family became my family became his family. So just for reference here, we are totally talking about a new man now, old man in the past. I'm just going to leave out all the stuff that has to do with him because it's really not relevant much more to the story going forward. He did beat on me a lot. He physically would beat me up, but whatever. I left him in the dust and moved on with my life. So once my family knew what I had went through, they were a lot more sympathetic towards my situation. And so I was engaged, happy. I was in hair school to be a cosmetologist, and I was also in school to get my CNA, a certified nurse aide license. And so I was kind of just doing it all. And boom, got pregnant again. So this time, obviously, it was not planned, but it wasn't like a bad experience or anything like that. It was definitely normal pregnancy. I didn't gain much weight. I started getting real sick health-wise, started realizing that something wasn't right with my body. My son came out very early. He came out almost 10 weeks early, and he had to stay in the ICU for a long time. My daughter at this time was 3, almost 4. So they were like best of friends growing up. They still are. And then things went sour.
Whenever you first started having relations with people and everything like that, was it hard because you were SA'd? Like I've heard a couple of people talk about this before, where like getting into that intimate relationship is super hard because of what happened to you.
I had trust issues with everybody, but especially with my first real. Cam was my first real boyfriend, my first real relationship. When I always talk about the 3 types of love, he was love number 1, where you think it's love, but not really. Puppy love. We were too young. We were 17 and we broke up when I was 21. So we had a decent, long relationship. But he began getting abusive.
Yep.
I found out after I had our son, I needed emergency surgery on my stomach, and that's kind of what tripped the wire with all my health problems. And that's where the painkiller addiction came in.
Why did you need emergency surgery after that?
So after I had my second child, like I said, I gained 14 pounds in my pregnancy, and the doctors were absolutely concerned. They were worried. They thought maybe I had some kind of a parasite. I mean, they did all kinds of tests. They did something called an ERCP, where they go down and they open up the pancreas and they put metal stents inside of it to keep it open, because mine was swelling shut. And they had already removed my gallbladder, which is what controls your acid reflux.
Right.
And so I started getting all kinds of surgeries. In the midst of these surgeries, my ex, Cam, was cheating and just all kinds of crazy stuff behind my back. And I started finding out about things and realizing what was going on. So at that point, trust was gone. Trust was blown. At that point, I questioned my sexuality, whether I wanted to even be a hetero female, if I even wanted to date men anymore. I explored dating women for a little bit after that. So getting a lot of surgeries, didn't trust men, had been beaten on and cheated on by 2 guys now, and that was all that I knew. And also, I didn't have a dad that was very, he just wasn't involved.
Right.
He was financially, was keeping our family stable, but I didn't want financial. He would give me his credit card and let me have whatever I wanted. But that's not really what I was craving. I wanted his love. And I wanted him to go beat the hell out of these guys that did this to me. And he just wouldn't bat an eye at it. And I understand he had a very serious job and he couldn't get caught, doing bad things. But my dad was also an alcoholic, and he hid that very well. So a lot of it was him being an alcoholic, I think, affected his ability to parent and to be good to me and my little brother, because he was white collar and he was businessman by day, drunk by night. And we didn't know. We had no idea that was going on.
Wow.
So after I had all the surgeries, I think I had 3 back to back, one in 2009 and then 3 back to back in 2011. So that's kind of that was like the running start right there. And the doctors, the GI doctors that would give me painkillers, if I wanted more, they would give me more.
Yep.
They never gave me a limit. They never told me no. They were giving me benzos. They were giving me opiates at the same time. Now, I wasn't really a benzo person. I never had an addiction to benzos, but I would sell them. I remember getting bottles, like big, fat, round bottles of Norcos. And then it just upped and upped and up from there. And I got sent to pain management. And pain management was like, well, you've got a lot of issues going on. You're having a lot of surgeries. I think I had like 3 more surgeries by this time. So we're in 2012 now. And it was just surgeries, all surgeries, and just blurriness because I was on so many painkillers. And the pain management doctor looked at me as a 21-year-old girl and wrote me 4 patches on my arm.
Yep.
And
now I have a question. Did you ever abuse those? Because I used to get those prescribed, and I would.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Not yet. I never abused the medication that was given to me. I overtook it, but like didn't like take like the gel out of the patches and like eat it, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, I did that.
So he wrote me for I think it was like 48-hour patches. Don't even ask me how many milligrams. It was enough to kill a horse.
Yeah.
I mean, my ex, we were kind of like getting back together on off at this time, and he put half of a patch on himself and was vomiting and got so sick. He's like, I will never do that again. Never. Like, so, and it didn't do that to me. So that's how I knew I was like really in deep. And I was still taking painkiller pills on top of the gel. I mean, I was just like, what was I thinking? But, so I was on the patches. I think I got caught somewhere along this road. I got caught doctor shopping, and I got flagged in the system as narcotic seeking behavior. Because I was on the patch and they knew I was on the patch, and it would show, I think it was like right when like the computers for all the nurses was like, where they could see like what all you were getting written from.
Yeah, like they merge it from other clinics, and like they could tell right, if they know what pharmacy you go to, they could tell what's prescribed.
Well, and I'm guessing at this point you, probably even whenever you just started with the painkillers, you hadn't ever gone to like therapy or counseling or none of that, had you? Yeah.
Not a damn thing to help myself. I just wanted to numb the pain.
Why didn't your parents, like, did your parents talk to you about that at all whenever you told them about the whole SA situation?
Did they talk to me about therapy?
Yeah, like even just talking to a friend really or anything.
You know, a lot of those memories from back then are very blurry. They're very hazy. It's hard for me to remember everything that was said, but I'm sure they probably did. But the things that went on going forward makes the things I'm talking about right now look like preschool. I mean, you would think like, wow, Amy, that's a lot. Like, damn. No, it's not. I mean, you just like, you can't make this shit up. It just, the way that it got worse and worse and worse was insane. I mean, absolutely insane. So I got blacklisted in the system. I think I remember like getting called out by a doctor, and like my face was like hot red, okay? Because, if you're an addict and you know exactly what this feeling is, if you've ever been addicted to something, when the feeling of a doctor is about to cut you off.
Right.
Your stomach just
boom. Yeah. It's the worst feeling in the world, because it's like even your body language. I can remember shaking like this in the room to the doctor, like,
yeah.
Not good.
So this doctor was on the phone, and I was like, hey, I'm having some pain with like one of my surgery incisions. Can I get some breakthrough medicine to like cover where like the patches aren't covering? And he was like, wait, what? Patches? What patches are you on? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know what they're called. Like at the time, I really didn't know what they were called, because on the bottle it said something else. Like, like hydro, whatever they call it. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's called a Duragesic patch.
Yes. So I didn't really physically, I didn't really know what all I was on. And the doctor goes, I'm not writing you anything. Like,
Right.
are you nuts? Like, you're on patches and analgesic patches that could kill a horse. Like, do you think I'm going to write you more painkillers? And I mean, I can't remember what all he said, but he was ripping me like a new asshole. He was
He
like,
laid it in.
absolutely. He was like, bam, bam, bam. And my face was so hot red. He's like, I'm going to call your doctor. I'm going to tell him that you're trying to get others, trying to get stuff from other doctors. And I'm sure your pain management doctor won't be happy to hear about this at all. So right during that time, I would say 2013 was the year from hell where literally like everything came crashing down in my entire family, not just with me, my little brother, my dad, and my mom. My dad's addiction came to a surface. My little brother's addiction came to a surface. He was an alcoholic. I hate the number 13 for a reason because I just feel like anything with threes, as I was talking about, if anybody watched my video, 3s and 13s, just
I've heard that. I've heard like a lot of people feel superstitious that like death comes in 3s or bad situations comes in 3s. Have you heard that?
Yes, absolutely. Like when someone's pregnant, it comes in 3s.
Right.
I always feel like 3s and 13s have always just been like, ugh. But I remember like my little brother, we moved at this time, my family and we moved out to, well, it would make sense if I told you where I moved to because no one would even know what I'm talking about. But we moved like 30 minutes west of where we were living, to a nicer, more upstanding neighborhood. And my little brother was really like going off the rails. He was underage, drinking, crashing cars. He crashed my car, crashed his car multiple times, hit deers. I mean, just like things were just going all over the place. My dad, his addiction was shining through pretty bad. My dad and my brother would start getting into it and actually pull on each other. They would draw on each other and got into physical fights. And I would try to break it up. And, I didn't have any credibility anymore because at this point, my parents, the way that they found out that I was using was right, like I would say probably like February, March of 2013 was when like all my like medication and like painkillers and all that from doctors came to a halt. I didn't get anything from them anymore. They wouldn't write me anymore. I was blacklisted from every doctor, every hospital. And so I started looking for what I needed on the streets. And my ex-best friend, very, very ex-best friend for a reason, I remember like I knew she did H at the time. And I thought maybe she might have a connect to get painkillers. So I went to her and I told her, hey, I'm sick. I mean, I was like the sickest I'd ever been. Okay. I was
Right.
like, on my knees, like,
because you're used to being able to get it from the doctors. And once that stops, it's very hard to figure it out after that.
Yeah, because people who get it from the doctors regularly, like you haven't ever had to figure out what withdrawal is like.
Right.
And that's whenever you don't start with docs, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a different experience because you have to chase it, so you pace yourself sometimes a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I had been so used to this everlasting supply. And so like when I didn't have it, I was like, but I mean, it was like a stomach dropping feeling every day, all day. And like, I mean, just goosebumps, sweating, puking, just feeling terrible.
Now, how was it taking care of how old was your daughter at the time? Like, because that's hard taking care of kids when you're sick like that.
6 and 2. Yeah. Mom and dad. And then like my ex's mom and dad
Okay.
took care of both, like a lot when I was going through this. And so the day that it all went down, where the day where I switched from painkillers to illicit drugs, was when I went to my best friend and I gave her the money, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll go get you some painkillers, no big deal." And she came back with 8. And
That always happens, doesn't it?
yep.
Everyone has that in their story.
Yep. And I mean, mind you, we had been best friends since we were 4, 5 years old.
Wow.
And for her to do that to me, knowing that I was so vulnerable and so sick that I would take anything at that point,
Yep.
is so wrong on her behalf. And she plays such a major role in my life. And I'm not holding her responsible for my addiction, but I am holding her responsible for giving me the option, because you're offering, it's like giving sand to the ocean. It's just like why would you do that when that's already there? That person already has a problem. Why would you exacerbate their problem? But
I know people that sometimes feel like they're helping somebody by doing that. Like they don't have malicious intentions. They just don't want that person to feel sick because, hey, I know what it feels like to be sick. This will help you.
oh, this one had malicious intent.
Okay, there's a difference. So sometimes it's
Yeah.
not like that.
This one had malicious intent. Not only was she sleeping with
Oh,
my
never
ex
mind.
behind my back
Okay.
at that time, so we were on the fence trying to get back together, and she was with him behind my back. She was just trying to destroy me. I mean, she even admitted to it later that she was trying to destroy me. But her mom and her were both users. And so her mom and her went and got the shit and came back, cut, on a plate, and they handed it to me, and they were like, "It's just like painkillers. It's the same thing." Like, literally. I mean, just all you got to do is just, and I was so terrified that like I was just going to drop, like just fall on the floor. And they kept trying to tell me that like what they were about to give me was mixed with a little bit of painkillers. So like, you're totally good. Like, you're so good. Like, it's all good. I believed them and I did it and never looked back. I mean, after that one time, and like anybody who's listening right now that has an addiction or has clean time and is thinking about going back, or you're thinking about switching to something harder, I am telling you, don't do it. Because we as people and humans can only control ourselves so much when we're addicts. And when I had that taste of illicit, I never wanted to go back to medicinal medicine. It was one time. But I literally did this and never looked back. I stole the Dee Dee's number out of her phone and called him myself.
Wow. Hey, you cut corners. I've done that before.
Yes, because I knew she was, very much robbing me blind. Okay,
Right.
we'll just put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go to the guy myself, and things just got progressively worse from there. And I wasn't IV using yet. I was just, and so it wasn't, it hadn't even gotten as worse or as bad as it was going to get. So I believe that was like February, March when that happened. Now we're all the way into October. I kind of just was going like this on the road, of just getting what I can, doing what I can when I can do it. And in October, I got pulled over and I had at that time 14 warrants out for my arrest. Yeah. for
Wow.
speeding tickets, failure to appear, fugitive of justice, just silly stuff that I could have taken care of.
I remember those days. It's the days that you get the court paper in the mail and you say, fuck it.
Yep. I tried to duck off, hide in some streets, turn my car off, hide up in it. Cop came right, turned right back around, comes pulling down the street. He's like, I saw you. And about 6 other cops pull up behind him, and I knew I was in big trouble.
Yep.
That's that time your heart drops again. That stomach drops again, and you're like, oh my God, what do I got on me? Can I hurry up and take it? Like,
I
Right.
tried to do what I could, but I was too nervous. I was very new in my addiction. This was like I wasn't some seasons like, oh, I know what to do. I'm going to hide this there and do this. I had so much crap in my purse and in my car, all over the floor, just everywhere. They arrest me, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be withdrawing. I'm going to be sick. This is going to suck. I start crying, but I'm like, oh, like, I need to go to the hospital,
Right.
anything. I was doing anything to get out of, like, what I had just got myself into,
Which that could have been fair, hospital. Like,
Yeah. And the cops were like, save it, lady. We know you. We already know what you're on right now. So save it. So, I'm crying, bawling, and all they did was take me to, they took me to the jail, and they never really put me in a cell or anything. So I was really surprised at this. Never put me in a cell. They wanted to use me, and I didn't know that they wanted to use me, but they wanted to use me to find out if I was going to snitch. And
Ooh.
they were like showing me pictures in jail of Dee Dee's, and I was like, yeah, that's him. That's him. That's him. Yeah, for sure. Definitely wasn't. And they were like, ha,
Ooh.
very funny because that one's dead. Like, they were just playing games with me.
Wow. They wanted
gave
to
me a
test your loyalty.
Yeah.
They were trying to test your loyalty.
They give me a ticket and they kick me loose, right? So I'm like, you're going to let me go? Like, after all that? So I think that was like the universe's sign to me right there. That was God's sign to me. Like, I just spared you. Stop doing what you're doing. Get your life under control. Did I? No. Absolutely.
Right.
I was just getting started and just starting to think like, this is kind of fun. Like playing cops and robbers. And after that was October. Okay, well, they did impound my car. So when I got home, my parents started to wonder, where's your car? And I would like tell them, oh, it's at my friend's house. They're repairing, they're going to fix it for me. And they're like, my mom's like, what's wrong with it? Your dad can fix it. Like, why would you leave it at a friend's house? And I kept the lie up for 3 weeks. Finally, I remember laying in bed. I was dope sick, and because I didn't have a car, so it was hard to. I was borrowing my mom's car, and I think like it was something about like they went out of town or something. I can't remember. And I got real sick, and you know how you get real sick, and you are so sick to where you can't even get out of bed to figure out what you need to do to get off sick. That's how I was. That's how bad it was. I was very down, very bad down. And my parents came in my room and they said, Amy, we know what's going on. And I was like with what? Like trying to play stupid. And they're like, we know what's going on. And at this time, my mom's best friend, her daughter had just OD'd and died. And so they were just stifled when they found out that I was doing what I was doing. And so I said, I'll get help. I'll go to rehab, anything, like whatever you guys want me to do. I'm ready to get help. I totally wasn't.
You know the worst part of that though? Whenever you're laying there and you're so sick and you just want it to be over, and somebody comes at you with some shit like that, it's like,
Right.
can you wait like 4 or 5 days so I can get better and then come at me with this crap because you just don't want
Right.
to deal with it?
I
Oh,
just
man.
wanted them to leave me alone.
Yeah,
Yep.
you get defensive.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just like, please get out of my room. Like, I'll go to rehab. I'll go tomorrow. Let's go. Just let me sleep, please. And I did end up going to a rehab inpatient facility for 11 days. 11 days. And I'm surprised I made it that far. But I think most of what made me make it that far was that I was so sick and I didn't have a car and I had no way. But then I started to like feel a little bit better and I was like, called my and said, hey, come and get me from this place down in the city. And he's like, off, bet, finna pull up. Okay, be there 10 minutes. 5 hours later, you know how it goes. 5 hours later, he comes pulling up. He calls the rehab phone and he's like, I'm outside. You know, I'm like, thank God. Grabbed my stuff and booked it and
Oh.
got, did my stuff in the car while we were driving. And he took me back to some random person's house. And that's when I began living with drug dealers, literally living with them and watching all the ins and outs of making and cutting and selling all that good stuff,
So you got schooled. You got a little education on the
Yep,
backside of things.
I did. And I watched a lot of people die. I watched a lot of people get robbed, people unalived for the most insane reasons. And it was very, very scary. And I started to get scared for my own safety because the man I was living with would threaten me with a every day and tell me, you're mine and you're going to follow my rules.
Right.
Yeah. So this was 2014 into 15. Nothing really crazy or exciting happened in these 2 years, except for me just being a huge dumbass, a bad mom. I wasn't there for my kids. And when I was, and Kyle, I know you can relate to this because I've seen all of your videos with the things I don't miss while getting high. Yeah. Of just family events, being around your kids. My family was going on vacations. And do you know how bad I wanted to go? I would cry because I just wanted to be with my family. And I
Right.
wanted to be with but the mountain in front of me was so high to climb. And I just wasn't able to do it.
Would he have even let you do it if you wanted to? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. He knew I wasn't going to snitch on him. So he did end up eventually like letting me leave. And we kind of like, I switched places of where I was living. I was staying somewhere else. And like I said, nothing really crazy or exciting happened in these 2 years. Now, 2015 was probably the worst year because I lost custody of my son. So I didn't show up to the court hearing because I was messed up and had a bunch of warrants out for my arrest, and I didn't want to go to jail. So I evaded the custody court, whatever they call it, the proceeding.
yeah.
I evaded it, and I didn't know what, like off the top of my head, I didn't know what would happen if I didn't go to court. But I also knew at that time that my ex-best friend who got me using also got my ex using. So
Wow.
they're using together in front of my son. And I'm over here begging to see my son. And my parents wouldn't let me come around him if I was messed up. So I would do everything to be sober. And they're over there using with him. And he gets default custody of him because I didn't show up. that was the first thing in my life that I had lost that made me realize, what am I doing?
Yep.
I have been 4 years into my addiction now, and I was full of tracks, full of just, my hands were puffy, gross, my everything just looked awful. I was having issues with my teeth from grinding them, and I was ODing. I had OD'd twice by this time, and back then everything was H. Now it's all F, fent, whatever.
Right.
And so every now and then a wave of fent would come through, and I would get it and knock out and overdose. And so the first real thing that I lost, besides losing my car, my freedom, and then I lost my son. And I was like, okay, God, I'm done. I'm ready to figure out. I think I'm ready to get clean. And I was in such a bad shape. I was in bad shape here. So we're going into 2016, and I called my parents and I said I'm ready to get clean. I was living with some random people, literally just some random people. And one of the guys that I was living with tried to SA me. So I took off running down the street and called my mom, and I said, I'm ready to go to rehab. My parents cut me off. I had no communication with my family. Back then, harm reduction wasn't a thing like it is now. My family was like, tough love on her, tough love. Like, don't talk to her. The whole family cut me off. I wasn't allowed to talk to any of my kids, either of my kids. And, it was just shitty. It was terrible. But I made the choice on my own. All I had with me when I took off running down the street was a child-sized backpack and a Bible and 14 letters that I wrote to all of my family members, including my kids. And I remember like hiding up, like posting up behind this like gas station that was closed. And it was the middle of the night in a very, very bad area. And my mom had a 50-minute drive. So I was going to be standing there waiting for 50 minutes.
Wow.
And so when I sat there, I just sat down. I couldn't see much, but there was like light from the street light. And I opened up my Bible and I just started reading. And I started reading and started praying out loud, like, help me make the right decision here. Help me make the right choice. Like if I'm going to do the right thing, I want to do it right. I want to do it the right time, the right way, with your guidance. And I got picked up by my mom, and I just cried, and I told her how sorry I was. And we got to the rehab. I walked in through those doors, and God, I can't tell you how many times in the first couple of days of how painful it was, bending out of a $500 to $800 a day habit. Those bended hard. But once I came through it, I didn't ever want to go back. I felt free for the first time in 5 years. I mean, I could smell things I had never smelled before. I could taste things I could never taste before. I saw things I never saw before. I could cry for the first time, and it felt good. I would cry for no reason, just because I wanted to.
So you felt like a fog started to lift?
Yes. I was in a good treatment center, and I remember laying in the grass, smelling the grass, and I was like, wow, this is like so good, and they got me on the proper medications. I did do it cold turkey, so I came off everything cold turkey, no MAT medications whatsoever. I wanted to make sure I felt everything so that I never went back into this again. I wanted to feel every bit of withdrawal. So I let myself withdraw for 3.5 weeks. It took me 3.5 weeks to detox completely, to where I felt no sickness. I mean, I still kind of felt like a little like, kind of like half melty face, whatever. But right around 30 days, I felt good.
What were you coming off of? Was it methadone?
No, just H and
Oh, okay.
whatever it was cut with.
I have a hard time explaining that to people because so many people ask like, how long did it take you to feel better and stuff like that, and
It's different for everybody.
well, and it's a hard thing to quantify because it's like the physical side kind of goes away at a certain point, but there's still like stuff going on, and
Right.
and you don't want to tell someone, well, it took 6 months before I was actually
Yeah,
normal because they think that it actually took that long.
no, I don't want to tell somebody that. I know that can be so discouraging, and I don't want to discourage anybody. So that's just my experience, guys. It may not always be yours. Now, the reason I had a harder time is because I had lupus and I didn't know it.
Yep.
So I got out of rehab. This is where I met Taylor, and Taylor is the man that is the one that is in my pinned videos on my profile. That was also in the pinned video that Kyle made for this podcast today. I met him in rehab, and that's a huge no. Do not date anybody in rehab. I don't care what anyone says, what they look like, how you feel. Just don't do it. Don't date anybody for a year until you are a year free and clean and sober, because I'm telling you, your brain is doing all kinds of twisting and turning, and it's making so many different thoughts, and it is trying to help reform your brain and your decision making patterns so that you can
Right.
properly, think for yourself. So I dated him. Things got super serious, super quick. My parents were real proud of me when I got out of rehab, and I did the 12-step program, and I was really, really involved in it. Had a sponsor, was really just going to meetings and sticking with outpatient. So I did 180 days of treatment altogether because I was just so serious about never going back to it. So dating Taylor while in rehab, he was in rehab with me, and then he was an outpatient with me, and he was love bombing the shit out of me. I mean, he was gaslighting me, love bombing me, making me feel like I was crazy. So I felt good, but I also felt kind of like insane. Like,
You questioned your reality,
I
right?
questioned everything. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. I'm like back to square one with like not trusting guys. But then he kind of like would make me feel like I was a piece of shit for not trusting him. Like, how dare I not trust you? Because you're God and like, you know everything. Duh. Like, it's just that kind of shit. And he would tell me he loved me. Like, I think he told me he loved me on day 2. And I ate that shit up because I was just getting clean. And my life was like such a mess. So I would cling on to anything that was telling me something good about myself, because we as humans feel like shit when we do this to our lives and try to fix it.
That's super common for addicts though too, just because you're so used to that instant gratification and everything happening so fast, you just throw yourself at shit.
6 months in, I was jogging around my parents' neighborhood every night, real skinny and real good shape, felt real good physically, and then all of a sudden I just dropped. And right at 6 months sober, dropped, fell into bed, thought I had the flu, and then I became delusional, and I couldn't even talk to my parents, couldn't talk to anybody, didn't have a clue what was going on. My phone was like on the other side of the room. And so for 7 days, I laid in my bed and became so septic, so delirious. Later on, it was because I had lupus and I had some major infections going on. I had a blood staph infection. I had an IUD birth control that had broke off and grown into the side of my uterus. I had formed abscess on my appendix, and on multiple organs. I had 16 of them growing inside my stomach. I had a huge cyst on my ovary, and that was all festering. And it just all came to a head. So I was delirious in my bed. By day 7, my appendix had already ruptured 96 hours prior to that.
Ooh,
And I was still clinging on to life.
wow.
Right. And my dad, on his birthday, And he comes upstairs and he realizes I'm not breathing. Okay. And my ex Taylor gets involved, tries to be the hero because he was a police officer. And he's telling me this story because I don't know. I wasn't alive. I don't know what I acted like. But he said he pulled me up. I vomited all over him. I sounded robotic. I had been urinating on myself. Like, I mean, literally, like, had no control of my body.
I've been there. That's the scariest feeling in the world. No concept of time, the dates, anything.
The ambulance got there, and my parents laid me, or my dad laid me on the floor of the foyer, and the EMTs came in and Narcaned me. Nothing happened. My dad said, she's not using it. It's not that. It's something else. I had thrown up like black coffee grounds. My fingers were black. My toes were black, and it was creeping up my legs. So they were like, okay, she's got necrosis. She's fully septic. Well, in the ambulance, I completely lost conscious, like heart stopped, everything stopped. They got the paddles out. They tried reviving me multiple times. I do remember feeling the electrocution of like going through my body. I remember waking up one time and like actually like feeling it in my eyeballs. I can't describe what I'm saying. And then when I got to the hospital, they cut my clothes off and immediately ran me through a CAT scan, saw everything that was wrong, and cut me open from top to bottom. I died multiple times in that ICU. And I remember like, I remember a lot of the things while I was, I guess, dead, of what I saw and what I heard. And that's a whole nother story in itself. It's too long to tell here. And you guys are welcome to come to my page. I will make a story about this, about what I saw and how, like, the more logistics of how this whole septicemia and illness started and how it finished and all that. But I got brought back, and I died a total of 3 times for a total of 9 minutes and 59 seconds. So almost 10 minutes. I was dead. They told my parents if she does make it, she will be a vegetable. She will not have any motor function. She will have no control of her body. You will have to take care of her. You will have to feed her. She will need to be on a feeding tube, a G tube, but breathing, everything.
Right.
And my parents were like, just do what you have to do to keep her alive. Like, we don't care if she's a vegetable. We want her here, and the doctors are like, I mean, kind of like trying to explain to them the pros and the cons of like making your daughter suffer as a vegetable and like not being able to have a life just because they want to keep me on this earth. And so they were discussing options of like pulling the plug and things like that. And they had a chaplain came in, and pray with them and stuff like that. And I was in a coma, and on day 7, I woke up, and I couldn't breathe on my own, but I could move my fingers and move my toes, and I was writing sentences. So it was everything they said I wasn't going to do, I did.
Isn't that the scariest feeling, waking up in the hospital with a tube down your throat like that? When I woke up like that, I didn't know what the hell happened. And the nurse brought like a clipboard, and that's how you like, what's up? What happened, right? Because you didn't remember.
They had to tie my hands down to the bed because I kept trying to rip it out of my mouth.
That's so scary.
So I stayed in the ICU for 4 months. I had hair all the way down to my butt. It was on like in a big bun. They never brushed it, so it got all matted. I got a bald spot back here. When I got out of the hospital, Taylor, my ex, not only did he abuse me in the hospital, he would whip me with the TV cord. He would throw pillows at me. He would put them over my face and pretend like he was going to suffocate me. He would shove naked photos of women in my face and tell me he was sleeping with them. He would tell me my top lip disappeared He would tell me my face was actually sinking into itself. He would tell me I was growing into the hospital bed. He would be like, look at you, you're a skeleton. You're so gross. You're ugly. You're disgusting. And I believed him. Okay? And he would come flying in and out of the hospital room, drunk, smelling, reeking of like alcohol and cigarettes. And like when you're sick like that, you don't want to smell that.
Right.
And he would be like throwing up in the bathroom in my hospital room, and I couldn't talk. So the nurses would come in, and there would be tears just streaming down my face. And the main horrible thing that happened to me while I was in the hospital was that he got on top of me and essayed me 3 times while I was in the hospital. 3 times. 3 is a magic number, I'm telling you, all the time.
Wow.
3 times he got away with it. And I mean, like I was cut open from here to here. Like I'm doing something with my stomach here to here, all the way down here. Was cut open. And it wasn't sewn, it was open, and it was packed with foam. And so it was just like an open wound. And he was just like hopping on top and doing his thing and hopping off. And the nurses would come in, and I'd be like, tears would just be like falling out of my eyes. And they knew something was wrong, but they couldn't pinpoint it. Like they couldn't catch him, and I couldn't tell them. So they just had to make an educated guess. So they asked him to leave. And then like the next day he would come right back and he would do the same thing. And then when I got out of the hospital, I didn't tell my parents what happened. And instead he gaslit me so hard. He told me it was the drugs that I was on in the hospital that made me think he was doing those things to me.
He made you question whether or not that really happened. That's crazy.
I did.
Wow.
I did. Now I know that it did happen fully, and I've known that for a very long time. But at first I didn't. I thought maybe I was just like making this shit up in my head.
Yeah, or like hallucinating, or like
Right.
Wow.
Right. So our relationship went on to be very abusive, and then he showed me like this angelic side of him where I was healing and getting better from being so sick, and he would take care of me, and he was showing my parents what a good man he was. And after 6 months of him like being good, I was like, oh, he's being good, so I'll marry him. There's where the toxicity and the toxic traits that I have been taught along my life, there's where they came in again. And I made the choice to marry him and have a kid with him after having like all these infertility issues. And I feel like the infertility was like God saying, you don't need a kid with this man. You don't need a kid with this man, so stop. Now I love my Remy. He's a miracle, and he doesn't know his dad. He doesn't know his real dad at all. But I don't regret him at all, not one bit. But the experience of being abused by my ex went on and on and on. And even after he was born, it got worse because he was addicted to alcohol and METH, if I can't say that on here. Really bad. Like, to where he lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks. And mind you, he was a police officer, okay?
Wow.
Doing this. He was a cop pulling other people over while tweaking, and was like pulling his service weapon on random people for things that like he didn't know why he was doing it.
How did no one else figure this out? No one he worked with?
Everybody knew he was on something, but I will tell you, the level of corruption is unbelievable.
Right.
Everybody
They cover everything up.
Yeah, everybody's keeping somebody else's secret. Everybody's keeping another cop's secret. Like, this cop is cheating on his wife with this person's wife, and this cop is doing this drug with this person. It's crazy. I saw some of the most corrupt things I've ever seen in my life, and so it's hard for me to trust cops now. It's very hard.
They turn a blind eye to what they see. It's like, okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
eventually, the main incident of him putting to my head and pulling the trigger and it jamming and my kids being locked in the back room. That was the first incident of him trying to end me. He had a plan, and the cops found the plan.
Wow.
He was having an affair with another married woman, and gun jammed. He got arrested, went to prison. He got out a second time, tried to me by pulling like a cord around my neck and pulling it up like that. Threw me through some glass in the door in our house and tried to cut me with it.
Is this the one that was in the video with your hair?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the third time. That was the third time. Second time, he tried to kidnap our son and ended up hurting our son. Now, these things were in the newspaper.
Wow.
Because he was a cop, it went all over. It went all over. And I was so embarrassed. I wanted to sink in a hole and never reappear. And I was like, trying to like make excuses. Like I was like, oh, we broke up like a long time ago. I don't know why he was at my house. Like he just showed up acting crazy. When really it was me that let him in.
Right.
I let him come in my house, our house, and do those things to me. And then the second time when he hurt our son, I was like, you're not allowed back here ever again. And I broke things off with him.
Now, what would happen? Say you had to call the cops for an incident. Did you guys live in the same town that he was a cop in? Or did he know the cops that would show up and they would like cover shit up?
So the cops of the city that we lived in was a department he used to work for, and they all hated him.
Ooh. Okay. I like that.
Well, and especially once he hurt your son, like I feel like that, I don't know, no matter who it is, I feel like somebody would have stopped that.
Well, they were like, hey, we're just going to tell you up front that we remember when he used to work for us, and when he was married to his first wife, he would be, doing some of the same things to her, which I knew a lot of this already, but didn't know how deep it went. I didn't know how deep this truly went. But they were happy to arrest him. Oh my God. I
bet you felt a sense of relief.
Yeah, I did.
So during this time, because I saw the videos that you had posted, did you feel so unsafe that you felt the need to always pull your phone out and record like certain conversations or, set the phone up in the corner somewhere for your own safety and protection?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All the time. Yes. I started recording everything.
Now, would that enrage him? Did he figure out that you were recording him? Because a lot of times when they know that you're recording, that sets them like crazier.
Yes. So if he would find out that I was recording, you could hear him taking the phone and me going, stop, no. And then you would hear it like make a bunch of, and he was breaking it. And so the audio would still be there, but you couldn't see the visual.
Right.
And then I would keep getting new phones and like transfer. And then I would like hide my old phone and use that to record so that if he found it, it was already broken, I started figuring out ways to do things very sneakily.
Oh, I'm sure.
But once we separated, and he went to prison, I was sweet relief.
Now, how old was your baby when he got locked up? Like
4 months.
Wow.
Yep.
So you've went through a lot of like having babies and doing it on your own.
Yes.
Wow. I commend you for that. I really do.
Yeah. So, I was single for a while, did some work on myself, kind of went back to the basics, really started honing in on my life coaching business, which my ex hated. Taylor hated me helping anybody, especially guys. Wasn't allowed to help any guys. But once he was locked up, it felt like, I mean, I would catch myself on a daily basis being like, oh, I can do that? Like, oh my
Did
God,
you
like
feel
I'm
like
free.
did you feel like a heightened sense of like always looking over your
Yeah.
shoulder, or
Yeah.
like if the phone rang, a doorbell, like
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. Always. I always felt like someone was going to get me. And that's a story, again, for another time. If you guys want to come to my page, I will tag you guys in it too. I'll make a story about how during this time while he was in prison, I was stalked really badly.
Jeez.
Wow.
And got it all on camera. Okay. But that's, again, another day, another time.
We're not even to the worst of your story yet.
Yeah.
And
So I just kind of want to get to the main part, but I worked on myself, stayed single for a while, and my little brother was going through his addiction and he wanted to get clean. And so we were kind of doing some networking, and that is when I met my sweet Michael. And I call him my sweet Michael because he was just always a sweetheart, and everything about him was just angelic and sweet, and he didn't have to fake it. He was genuinely a sweet person. And when we met, it was like instant chemistry, and we just got along so well. And he helped my brother get sober, and kind of played like a big brother role to him. And he would always joke around and say, I'm going to marry your sister one day. And obviously nothing like crazy serious that would make me think like he was being facetious, but just jokingly. And we would just go out on dates, and we would just hang out and talk. We would talk for hours, and I mean hours. And it was never any pressure with him, never, let's do something. Like, if you don't want to do anything with me, then like, fuck off, I was so used to that. Do this with me now, sexually, or I don't want anything to do with you. You know what I mean? Like, basically having my worth defined by,
right.
you're a 10, so like, let's do this. Like, he made me feel like a 10 based on who I was inside, and it had nothing to do with outside. And Michael had his struggles, just like I did, with substances. And, we both went through some really serious stuff in our past. We had similar interests, and he had lost somebody before he got with me. And then our relationship was just a lot of fun. So I would say in 2021, kind of that's like when we really started discussing like our future together and what our future looked like. And we got engaged, and then we went on to have our first child, and that was his first child. And when we were pregnant, they did discover that he might have something wrong with him. And it wasn't Downs, wasn't like, they couldn't come up with what it was exactly. So we were really, really nervous. And when the baby was born, I mean, he was beautiful as can be. He just looked healthy. Nothing looked off with him right away. Well, they did the heel stick, where they prick the baby's heel and check for any genetic disorders. And they came back about, I think it was day 2. And they said, we want to talk to you about your son. He has spinal muscular atrophy. And we're like, well, what is that? Like muscular dystrophy? And they're like, no, much worse. It's fatal. And he's not going to survive, and he's not going to leave this hospital. And so, granted, this is Michael's first child. his first experience. He was already raising Remy, but this is his first biological child on
Right.
earth. And that was his experience. And it was awful. SMA is a very, 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 very serious condition, depending on what type they have. And he has type 2. And but he wasn't showing signs of it. So they were just kind of like, we're going to kind of play this as an asymptomatic thing and treat it asymptomatic. And so they life-flighted medication from, I don't know where like it came from, but they life-flighted this medication to our son so that he could be getting it orally and it would help him.
Wow.
And then he got a genetic transfusion January 5th of 2023. So he was already 6 months. So he got the infusion 2023. Well, at 5 months postpartum, we found out we were pregnant again.
I can't even imagine, because I have children that have genetic diagnoses as well. And for me, I went through a period where it was like a grieving period almost with that, because it's like you grieve what your child could have been, or, just different things. Like you grieve.
It was so hard. And so Michael and I were suffering, both of us were suffering
Right.
like postpartum. Like, I mean, Michael even was like, I think I have like father postpartum depression.
Because you grieve what it should have, like your experience and all of that. It's a lot to take on mentally.
Right. So at 5 months postpartum, I was on birth control. Like we did everything, everything. And I started feeling tired, and I was having sleep paralysis, and I'm like, and I have sleep paralysis a lot, but like I get it really bad when I'm pregnant, especially.
So it was like a telltale sign.
Oh yeah. And I was having it so much, and I went to Michael and I said, hey, I am having a bunch of sleep paralysis again. And he's like, okay, well, like take a test, like if I mean, there's no way. We were both like, no,
Right.
no way. And I'm in the bathroom and I'm looking at the test, and the second line came up so damn bright. Like
That's how it always goes. The time when you don't ever expect it.
Yep. It was like boom, boom. And I was like, oh my God. So I tried the digital one that said pregnant, not pregnant. And I looked at it and it said, it came up so quick. It was like pregnant. And I texted him and I said, come upstairs right now to the bathroom, And he comes upstairs and I'm like, I'm bawling in the bathroom. Bawling.
I've been there before.
And so, he's holding me and he's like, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. So we went on and I was, kind of like, I made a choice. Hey, bud, go in your room. I made a choice to hide my pregnancy.
Was it because you didn't want to hear like, oh my God, why would you be so careless to get pregnant when you're facing all this with the baby that you just had?
Yes.
Type of backlash?
Even though we knew we were capable of taking care of our
Right.
Other people just judge. Like, I'm just so, I've been judged my whole life, because being an addict, you open yourself up to judgment, and that's just the way that it goes.
You don't want criticism from others in a situation that it's not going to change the situation. You're pregnant. And
then Michael started having some issues, mental wise, not like drug wise. He had been clean for about a year now. And we're like up to July of this last year. I'm due to give birth in September, and I'm pretty big, and we're still kind of hiding it from his parents and hiding it from my dad, which just sounds so crazy. But so we ended up telling everybody. Everyone found out. They all got it out of their system. It really wasn't even that serious to hide. And Michael came up with the name Anders, and I really liked that name. And I was like, okay, you know, or at first I didn't like the name, but you know, he came up with it, and I was like,
Got
It
now
grew on you.
Yep.
what I know now is it's beautiful now. But so in June and July, Michael was struggling real bad with depression, anxiety. He was not his normal self. I noticed that he just flipped from happy Michael to sad Michael. And I was working on trying to figure out what was going on with him. They were putting him on different medications, trying to figure out which one would work the best. He was on lithium, Abilify, Paxil, and it was just making him so miserable because we had serious trauma from what had happened with our son the year prior, with just all of the nurses treating us terribly, Department of Family Services getting involved, just so much trauma from the year before that I believe he was truly scared of that happening again. And so we put contingencies in place, and we did everything we could to make sure that this baby came out strong, healthy, with two healthy parents, you know, that love and care about him, that is a great addition to our family. And of course, my kids were really excited to have another sibling. So July 31st rolls around, and it's nighttime, and Michael goes to his mom's house for a week or so to help her recover from surgery. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, you know, because I wasn't due for a while. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, just keep in contact with me. And I texted him probably up until about 2 o'clock in the morning on August 1st, going into August 1st. And he was reading my messages and he was texting back. And I asked him a question, and I can't remember like specifically. I mean, I remember specifically, but I'm not going to say it because it's kind of personal. But he read it and didn't reply. And so I was a little nervous. And so I called him, and the phone picked up, and I heard like a rustling sound, kind of like a muffled, almost like someone's hand was like going like that. But there were no words. It was just sound. And so I'm like, oh, that's really weird. So I tried calling his mom. She didn't answer. Calls his brother. Doesn't answer. So I'm guessing they're all sleeping. So I'm like, maybe he just answered the phone in his sleep, because he's notorious for like throwing his phone in the bed and going to sleep and like sleeping on his phone and like answering it with his face or something. And so I continued to try to call him all the next morning. And I'm big, pregnant, large, and in charge, and I'm in no position to get in the car and drive up there. I could hardly drive a car at this point because I had sciatica really bad, and the baby was wedged and stuck, and it was just terrible. So I get a call at about 3:30 p.m. on August 1st from a detective, and he asks, you know, he's like, "Is this Amy Vilbert?" And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you know, I just want to let you know that we just found your husband deceased. And at first I kind of was like, no, you didn't. Like, what? Huh? And I said, who's my husband then? And they're like, Michael Sean Clark Jr. And I'm like, they kind of like said his name robotically, and I guess they were reading it off a piece of paper. And I'm like, deceased, where did you find him deceased? And I'm asking all these questions. And then at that point, I can't talk, can't see, can't anything. And I just dropped the phone and fell over on the floor, passed out, started crying, and then passed out. And this was all in front of my 5-year-old. And I had to call my mom and tell her to come over immediately. And she brings my oldest over with her. And I don't remember what all was said to me by the detective, but right now, as we know, is surrounding his unaliving, is that somebody unalived him. And the most I can really say about it is that he was snitching on other people and trying to get the bad guys off the street is the way that he was looking at it. And he was on a mission to do so. And it looks like the person that he was snitching on may have had something to do with his unaliving or someone that has associations with the person that he snitched on. I know there's multiple people involved in this situation. I know there's multiple people that came to the funeral that I have questions about. And right now the detectives are doing their investigation, but it was definitely foul play and the way that he was found. He was found on his knees, facing the wall, like he was begging for his life. And so I had to take in all this information. And then somebody said, and you called him during. I believe what happened was when I called him and there was a muffled sound. It was right when
they put the phone up to they must have put the phone up to his ear, or
because the Ring camera at the neighbor, they caught somebody running down the side of the house at 2:29. I want to say 2:29 a.m. running down the side of the house and running back up the side of the house and getting into a car at 2:33 a.m. He was pronounced dead at 2:31 a.m. So he was killed unalive, between those 4 minutes.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you think that some of like the depression and anxiety and everything too was because he was doing that? Like maybe he was worried?
Honestly, he was facing a lot of legal trouble. So I believe that and my little brother is facing a lot of legal trouble too. And I think they were both kind of in on it. Like, not my brother, not as much as my husband, but knows a lot about what was going on and who he might have been snitching on. So, the investigators, the DEA is involved. And they've got a line of suspects that they are going through. But not all these suspects are going to be cooperative.
So you being pregnant in this situation, my first thought is, oh my God, like how did you handle that pregnant, all that trauma and that, like your heart racing and that, were you afraid that you were going to go into preterm labor and give birth early?
Yeah. In a way I did. I would go into prodromal labor and I would go and start like contracting and this would go on for like hours and hours and hours. And then I would just like curl up in a ball and finally I would fall asleep and it would just stop and it would go away. And eventually it would subside. And this would go on for weeks. And when I went to his funeral, I was so I just couldn't believe what had just happened. For some reason, I thought I was being pranked. Like, this is not happening. This is not true. This can't be. And so,
like questioning your reality almost.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm about to have his baby any day now, and he's completely gone off this earth because somebody took him off this earth. Like, what? I mean, I was just talking to him. I was just with him. Like, how does that happen? That is how I was processing things. And then when we got to the funeral, and I could barely walk without assistance because I had sciatica so bad that one of my legs had no feeling in it. And his dad walked me down the aisle to the very end. And I see the casket and it's open. And nobody told me it was going to be open. and it just looked like he was sleeping. And I just put my hand on his hand, and I looked at his fingernails, and they were blue. And that sent me into a frenzy. I think it's just because the sign of life is gone. But his face just looked like he was sleeping. He looked very peaceful. And I really was thinking in my heart and in my head, I was like, if I was to have anything happen, I would definitely want, him to be peaceful. I wouldn't want him. That's all I kept thinking was like, I just hope that he did not feel any pain as he was dying, and it's just like, we'll never know what happened that night, because only the person that did this to him will know what he suffered through.
Yeah.
Did you have a good support system at this time, such as family or friends? Because I can't imagine facing all of this alone.
To be honest, my mom is a good support, but sometimes it's just not enough. She can only do so much. And it's just been, it's been so difficult, because sometimes it's better when I'm alone. I don't even want to talk to anybody. And grief is one thing, and then losing your husband is one thing. But then going on to have their baby after have passed is the weirdest contradiction of emotions I've ever felt in my life. I mean,
I can't imagine, you're thinking new life, and it's like that full circle moment of realizing that you're facing this alone.
That's like whenever people, like the mom passes in birth and everything, like everything's okay, and then all of a sudden you're by yourself.
Having him there the year before birthing our first son. And I've been wanting to put that video.
I saw the video. I've seen a lot of videos.
I want to put the full video.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I want to put the full video so everybody can kind of get the gist of what an amazing man this man was, and how amazing he was in our birth. How he remembered our entire birth plan and I didn't. He remembered everything of what I wanted to do. He advocated for me. He stood up for me in the hospital when the hospital was being weird towards us and judgmental towards us. He advocated on my behalf when I couldn't because I was too tired and I was too out of it. And then having our next son, and from having him as a human flesh standing here to literally having him in a picture frame on the table next to me was such a stifling thought. And every time I would look over at that photo, I would just be like, how did we get here? How did we get here? How has my life been this crazy? And it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and going when I don't think it could get any crazier. And then this happens, it's like, and how I talk about the 3 types of love. He was my 3rd type of love, that love that you just don't find anywhere. It just doesn't come every day. It's that true, deep down love that makes you feel like you are worth the world. And that is what I had with him. So having his baby alone and him not being there was just so awful. And all the nurses would say, my condolences, I'm so sorry, and it just, everything that they would say, it only helps so much because these people don't know what I'm going through. And when the baby was born, he had shoulder dystocia, so he was stuck in the birth canal, and all the alarms started going off. And the nurses and doctors had to get on top of me and break my ribs, 2 of my ribs on the side, to get him out. He finally comes out, and I don't see his face. They take him away for a minute. They clear out his throat, check on him, make sure he's okay. And I don't see him, and my mom sees him, and they finally bring him over to me, and I'm holding him like this on my chest, and I'm like, I can't see his face. And my mom, she brings the phone up and she puts it on the side of his face, and I'm like, oh my God, he looks just like Michael.
He
Oh
does.
my God. And it was like I birthed a little human baby Michael. And so I was like, I'm going to honor Michael and give him the name that he came up with, which was Anders, and his middle name is Michael. And
That's
he is
beautiful.
just, yeah, he's perfect in every way.
When
So,
it was postpartum, did you have a hard time? Because I know trauma can do funny things, and the postpartum period can be a little bit funny for a woman to adjust. I've been through it. Did you have a hard time, like, did you feel connected, or did you have a hard time at first connecting?
no, if anything, it was the exact opposite. I didn't want him to leave my side.
Yep.
That's beautiful.
When a nurse would come in and say, "Oh, we kind of need to do this," and I'd be like, "Nope,
Right.
nope, sorry, come back
Wow.
another day." I
I'm
would
glad that you had that experience, though, because it
Yeah.
could have been a complete opposite experience.
right. It could have been like the experience we had the year prior,
Right, right. So
but
you had,
it sucks because it was Michael's first experience on this earth was with a bunch of judgmental assholes who judged us for our past.
right.
And it's like, why couldn't we have had this birth with Anders that we had with our last son?
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense. Like, and I question and I ask God, and I'm like, why? Why do things have to be the way that they are?
Was it hard for you to adjust from going from, especially with your first baby still being so young, when you had Anders, was it hard for you to adjust to going to two kids?
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do you
Because,
manage? Like, how do you manage? I'm
well,
curious.
Michael's parents do a lot for our older son because of his needs, because of his disability. They're able to do so much for him, and I'm so grateful for that. So absolutely so grateful for that. And I have a good relationship with his mom.
That's good.
His mom and dad are divorced, so he's got a stepmom and then his dad, and then his mom live separately. So we share time with our 1-year-old, and then they see our newest son, just kind of whenever the time is right. He's never like stayed with them overnight or for more than a couple hours. Anders is too young. He's only 5 months old. Technically, gestationally, he would be 4 months old. He's got some health problems with like weight gain. He was born with failure to thrive. And I think a lot of that has to do with the intense amount of grief and stress that I had right before he was born. He came out.
You are a true warrior. I have to say, I give you so much credit for being able to go through the things that you've endured throughout your life. Like,
Right, right.
wow.
So, my story is a lot, and there's a lot to it, and I wish I could tell more of the details of some of the real dirty details, but we'd be here for like, an entire 12-hour session.
Right.
So
Hey,
that's
we're
why,
looking for people for part two, so maybe we can do a part two.
yeah.
Thank you for coming on and sharing everything.